It's a novel that really is about someone who has devoted his whole life to taking care of his irritating younger sister and her daughter. And he loves her daughter. He feels, this incredible sense of responsibility to her, but he's approaching, an age where he feels like, okay, I've got to kind of seize the day here with my own career. He's an architect and has an opportunity to build this house that's, going to be his masterpiece. But he has to let go of this urge to take care of other people. And of course, it's just at that moment that he gets a call that there are more problems, more trouble. And the overriding question that I wanted to explore was whether or not it's ever all right or even possible to stop taking care of other people in your life and start focusing on your own needs. And
Do you
you know,
feel? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that it's funny. Shortly after I finished that book, I became of necessity a caretaker myself. And so I kind of feel like I wrote that into being, not that I really think that, but that's kind of the way it feels. When I was in graduate school, I had as a teacher, Richard Price, who is this, you know, incredible novelist. And I remembered that he once said, one of the ways to write a novel is to make a list of all the scenes that you can imagine in the book and look at that list and say, this is the one I want to write next. And you write it. Doesn't matter what the sequence is, where it takes place in the novel. It's just like a scene or a chapter that you want to write. And then you look at the next one on the list and that you most want to write, and you write that. And then you worry about like putting it together later. And for years, I wanted to do that because it seemed pretty liberating thing to do. But I was unable to do it. But with my two most recent novels and the one I'm working on now, um, I was able to do that. And the metaphor I kind of used in my head was it's like shooting a documentary film, where you shoot hours and hours and hours of footage, and then you kind of put it together in the cutting room. I really enjoy writing secondary characters. I tell my students inappropriately enough, it's like having casual sex with someone. It's like you don't really need to know where they went to college and what their relationship was like with their mother and, all of this. You just need to know kind of the essential information and have a sense of what their central characteristics are. And the fun thing about writing secondary characters for me is that they don't need the same, they can be the classic, they're more flat. And so they can always respond to something in the same way or in a predictable way and still kind of come off as entertaining. And there's a woman who writes kind of self-help books in the novel. And she's a little bit of a villain character in that she's incredibly manipulative and problematic on a number of levels. And at some point, this kind of goes back to something you asked earlier, but to understand her a little bit better, I began writing a chapter from her point of view. And when I did that, then I understood kind of what was behind her defenses and her unappealing behavior. And she became much more interesting and much more, I just, my instinct is to want to find some kind of redemptive qualities in my characters. And I find that, um, I don't write about mass murderers and um, it's easy to do that once you understand them with a little more depth and where their behavior is coming from. Sometimes when I'm writing a novel and I've often been behind schedule on it and like had to ask for extensions on a deadline and so on, um, I would have a dream that I'd finished it. And I had a dream that I'd just finished this novel and I handed it to an editor and the title page had the title My Pornographer. And I always thought, oh, that's kind of an interesting title. Like, why did I think of that? And I when I finished You Only Call When You're in Trouble, I immediately, like the same day that I finished that book, I began working on something. And I had written about like 25 pages, and I thought, oh, I actually am working on this novel called My Pornographer. And it's set in the 1970s, and it's about a young man who kind of gets hired to write the erotic memoirs of this rather peculiar person, and what that involvement brings up in his own life. So.